This is the Joe Mullins Show.
This is part one of a two-part series with Congressman Randy Fine of Florida's 6th Congressional District.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and we have got a very special show today. We are recording live at Tortugas at the Flagler Beach. If you haven't been here to try this restaurant, the food's amazing. I just sampled some of the Bang Bang shrimp and some of the other things. Amazing food. You got to get out here and try. But businesses like this are why we're doing this show and this special show today. With me, I have a very special guest. I've got a couple of very special guests. I've got Kirk Keller from Flagler Broadcasting. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I've got Congressman Randy Fine, who has come in from D.C. to come in and talk and do the show with us. Congressman Fine, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me as always.
Now, he's been on the show several times. We've never been able to get him in studio, but if you throw it at the beach, you throw it in his district, he's going to come out and he's going to support
This
it.
is better than a studio.
It really is. It really is better. And I've got a lot of very special people in the audience. I've got a lot of elected officials. I've got a lot of residents, business owners. We are live here at Tortugas. It's very exciting to do this show today. And without any more delay, we're going to go ahead and start and we're going to talk. Congressman Fine, Kurt, do you want to go ahead and start and say something?
My first question is what everybody else is thinking is this property tax. If they do away with property tax, from what we have found out and some of the other stories I've done is that means our sales tax was going to go from 7.1% in Flagler County, which is the second lowest sales tax in the state of Florida, up to 13%. And that Palm Coast itself is going to lose 47% of our funding. How can we compete against that?
Yeah, hold on just a second. That's the only thing about, okay, go ahead.
So Congressman Fine, how can we compete against that funding being lost to 47%? And how can we not raise our sales tax up to 13%?
Well, so I'm going to start with the politician's answer. And thanks again for having me. When I was in the state legislature, which I was for 8 years and 3 minutes, that was an issue that I dealt with. Had I been in the state legislature, I might have been one of the people to vote to put that on the ballot. That is not something that is in my purview as a member of Congress. What I have done, and I'm going to answer your question in a minute, what I've done is lowered people's taxes. So I voted for President Trump's working families tax cut. That made sure the folks here who work for tips don't have to pay taxes on their tips anymore. It means if a police officer works more than 40 hours a week, they don't have to pay taxes on their overtime. And of particular interest to the people I represent, we ended taxes on Social Security benefits for more than 90% of my constituents. And you pay taxes when you earn the money. You shouldn't have to pay taxes when you get it. As it relates to this issue, I can speak to you as a former legislator, and I can talk to you about my perspective as an individual. So at the end of the day, what does this tax mean? I've done the analysis, and it means if your home is worth a fair amount of money, your taxes are going to go down by about $3,000 a year. So if you're paying $5,000 a year now, it'll end up being $2,000. If you're paying $10,000, it'll be $7,000. The amount is largely fixed because it basically ends when it goes up to a certain value. And as we deal with an affordability crisis in this state, putting $3,000 a year back in people's pockets is a good thing. Now, I understand the issues, and this is where local governments have an obligation to explain to their constituents what this would mean. And that the good news is the legislature put this on the ballot and they left 6 months for cities in Flagler County and the county to tell people, if we lose this $3,000 from you, this is what it might mean. And then people can make an educated decision. What I will tell you is most of our cities and counties have increased spending far, far faster than their populations have grown. You've got, certain local politicians like on the Palm Coast City Council who spend your money like crazy. They can't spend it fast enough. And then they want to say, cry me a river, we don't have enough money. So you have to take a look at if your spending has increased much faster than the population has grown and the rate of inflation, well, maybe it's good to vote for the tax cut. I'll be voting for it because I always vote to cut taxes. I think government should be smaller, but the onus is on the local politicians at the county level and the city level to explain to their constituents what it will mean if they lose $3,000 on higher value homes.
So one of the things you've done for Flagler County was you got us a big approval for some beach enrichment. would we lose that future money?
No. So the money that I've gotten, and today we had a press conference and we announced that I've brought $13.5 million back to Flagler County to deal with beach renourishment. In fact, we added it up before the press conference. I've only been in Congress for 15 months, but we've brought $50.1 million just to Flagler County. It's an unheard of amount, particularly for somebody who's just been in Congress for 15 months, $50 million. Now, a lot of that's for the beach, but we've gotten money for wastewater treatment. We've gotten money for hurricane preparation, all kinds of things. Airports, but 50 million just in this county. And I represent 6 counties, but 50 million. And we have 21 million lined up in the next budget that we haven't gotten yet.
For Flagler?
For Flagler, yeah. And look, maybe the budget will pass, maybe it won't. But what I would say is, no, the money that I get comes from effectively your federal income taxes. And that is not money that comes from the state. Now, if Flagler County is getting appropriations from, legislators, that state legislators, that would be different. But no, the funding I've been able to get has nothing to do with property taxes. No property taxes go to the federal government.
So if this passes, you don't look at this as robbing Peter to pay Paul.
No. I mean,
You just need to stop spending money, basically.
I mean, what I think, if I was advising some local politicians, I would say you need to tell your people, you need to say, here's how much we raise, here's how much we spend, here's what we spend it on, here's how our spending has changed over the last 5 or 10 years versus our population growth. And then I would say, here's what we're going to lose if this thing passes. And this is what we'll have to cut in order to do that. I know the people who put this on the ballot, their objective is not to cut property taxes and replace it with with sales taxes. Their objective is to cut the size of local government. And so it's up to every city and every county to explain to their voters what it would mean.
Now, to put this out in the open for what businesses and people understand, and I'm going to speak in a business level with it. Florida, we're known to not have a state income tax. We're known to get our revenue from property tax, through consumption, and through tourism. Those 3 major, and we cannot misplace agriculture. Agriculture is something amazing here in the county, and you guys have done a lot on the federal level to support agriculture. So especially Flagler County being an agriculture area, but on a business term, we're about to lose. This is equivalent. This tax cut is equivalent for a business to about to lose one of its biggest customers. When we stop this tax, when we start doing this with homes and start reducing the tax, we've got to start tightening the belt like a business would. We got to start thinking like a business would. How do we replace this income? Where do we cut back? What do we do?
But can I talk about why this is so important? One of the things I realized when I was in the legislature is the idea of private property ownership in Florida. It's not true. You don't actually own your property. Let's take this restaurant. Because this is a business. Let's look at someone's house. You think you buy your house, you think you pay off your mortgage and you own it. And it's not true. With property taxes, you just rent your house from the government. If you stop paying your property taxes, the government will take your house away. So if you have to pay the government money every year to keep your house, you don't own it. The government owns it. And so property taxes are fundamentally unfair because it means that you never own your house. Here's the other issue. When you talk about property taxes versus sales taxes, let's imagine that let's imagine we only had sales taxes, we didn't have property taxes. And let's imagine you lost your job. Well, you lose your job, you have less money, you probably buy less stuff. And if you buy less stuff, you'll pay less taxes. You go and win the lottery, you may go want to buy a bunch of stuff and you'll end up paying more taxes. So to some degree, when your tax system is based on sales taxes, you control to some degree how much you pay in taxes. When it's based on property taxes, it doesn't matter whether you have your job. It doesn't matter whether you lose your job. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter anything else. You're either paying your taxes or the government's taking your house away. So property taxes are fundamentally unfair. And in an ideal world, we'd get rid of them altogether. But you do make the argument, and that's why this stuff has to be thought through of, as much as none of us like taxes, someone's got to pave the road, someone's got to pick up the trash, someone's got to put out our fire if our house catches on fire and we need some police. The Democrats probably should support it because they don't believe in the police anyway. But But that is the issue. And so I think people need to make educated decisions based on how much this would cost local governments and how they say they would deal with it as a result.
Now, Congressman Fine, the CFO came into Flagler County, and he's been into just about every county in the state of Florida, and he identified areas where overspending was going. He talked about the general fund. Me being a former county commissioner, I saw that general fund used many times in areas it shouldn't have been, areas that they said, oh, we can just move it over here. So he calls it out. And just like many other counties across the state of Florida, everyone started on the county level getting defensive, started arguing they needed the money, they needed to spend it. We've got a group of business owners here. We don't have the luxury of going out and just creating and generating more money when these businesses start struggling, when things get tough. But yet the government in the past, like you said, has not had to worry about accountability, because one of the comments I heard made is, we'll just go and tax you more to get these things paid for.
And that's what they do. I can't speak to Flagler County in particular, but if you do look around the state, the average local government, city government or county government, revenues have gone up far faster than the rate of inflation and population growth. And the question is, where's all this money going? I'll tell you a story from my old state legislative days. So 2017, I'm in the state legislature and a hurricane comes through. And the local government made a decision. They hadn't maintained their wastewater system, and they literally opened the spigot and they allowed raw sewage to go into the intercoastal. And they didn't allow it to go in for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. They allowed it to go in for 35 days. 35 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, raw sewage going into the intercoastal. But at the same time they were doing that, the county commission had a meeting and they made a decision about how to spend I think it was $14 million. So they're in crisis in their sewage system, and they spent $14 million. They said, we need a new basketball arena. We need a new RV park for the county. We need to buy antiques for a museum that commemorates the lives of people who work in lighthouses. We don't need to fix our sewage system. And in my favorite one, they said, we need to improve the dock for kayaking that's a 1/4 mile away from where we're dumping the sewage into the water. Because I guess they thought people would want to row their kayaks around, floating sewage. And I learned from that many local governments just waste their money. Now, again, I'm not making any statement about Flagler County or any of the 5 cities that are here or anything else. But many of them don't spend the money efficiently. And again, we have people who are desperate to make Florida more affordable. And this is something that the government can do to do that.
Well, you got a city like Orlando, where one of our biggest listener bases, you can argue they have the biggest tourism in the state of Florida, yet there's still the property taxes, the fees they're charging, the things they're charging are outrageous. And they're continuing to argue and double down and say, no, this is political. This isn't. The public's not getting it. The public's not buying it. They're sitting here going, no, you need to stop spending. On a federal level, how do you see the federal level helping the state and local counties do this better?
Well, that's why I got $50 million for Flagler County. And by the way, we've gotten money for the other counties as well. We're just here in Flagler County
What
today.
fund did that come out of?
That just comes from the federal money. I mean, it comes from your income taxes, but it's not like a special dedicated fund or anything like that. And we've gotten it, and so we're getting money. That's part of the job that I have. But again, we have to deal with this fact. We have to deal with this affordability crisis that we have in Florida. We have to deal with the fact that we have residents who don't make as much money as they'd like. Some are retired. And they're told, hey, I know you're retired. I know you lived a great life, but if you don't rent your house from the government, we're going to take it away. And I think that is something that we have to look at. Again, voters will decide. I know I'm going to vote for it. But voters will have to decide if they understand there could be cuts in services. But I also think local governments, really the onus falls to local politicians to go to their voters and say, and lay out the case for why they need the money. Maybe they'll be able to do it. Maybe they won't. We'll see in November.
I know someone asked you the other day about FEMA and why FEMA is so slow. Now, I know
because it's the government.
We've been granted funds several times, and I believe that the FEMA administration that granted us funds was under Obama. And then the second time we got granted funds was under Trump. The Trump money came a lot faster than the Obama money. Does the administration's
Yes.
have a say of how fast it's paid
So,
out?
so you have a hurricane disaster, right?
Both of them were hurricanes.
Right. I know that's what FEMA pays for. You have a hurricane disaster, and there's stuff that has to happen that the federal government has long agreed they will pay for. So the way it works is the city or the county, they do what they're going to do, and then they turn in like an expense report to the federal government. Hey, I spent $2 million on doing X, Y, and Z. Please pay me back. And the problem is the federal government has not been particularly quick to pay those bills.
But we borrow the money and then we have to pay interest
And
on top of that.
and that's correct. And so that is the problem. So it's not just that the local governments spend the money. They oftentimes have to borrow the money, and then they have to pay interest. And even though it can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, when FEMA ultimately pays them back, they don't reimburse
And
the
what's
interest.
interest add up to be, Joe?
It can be a lot.
After 5 years,
It can be a
at
lot.
17
It can be
weeks.
a lot. They give you a lower interest rate,
could-
but
but
at
it-
the
but
end
it-
of the
but
day, it's
It
still
shouldn't be anything.
You know, I
the
agree.
bigger
And-
thing what Congressman Fine was talking about, because as a business owner, I'm going to take my hat off and put it on the business hat. We have dealt with FEMA, we've dealt with SBA, we've dealt with businesses that have really struggled. You go through, we'll get back with you next week, we'll get back with you next month. And Congressman Fine and his office has talked about this and promoted it and said it. Hey guys, start responding to these people quicker.
Yeah.
People in Asheville, North Carolina, for example,
Yes.
they're still not contacted by FEMA to get funds.
So my solution on these things, there's a short-term and a long-term solution. The short-term solution, and we have done this, we've told all of our cities and all of our counties, call me. Look, I'm known as a fighter. That's what I do. I fight. I'm not the peacemaker, but I fight on everything, whether it's stopping illegal immigration or making sure a city or a county gets their FEMA money. When I call, people listen. And so in the short term, if people come to our office and they say, hey, I'm waiting for money from FEMA, I will call. And I know all of these people. President Trump's my friend. I'll say we need the money, and then it comes. And by the way, we not only do this for local governments, we do this for thousands of regular people who are having a problem with the IRS, or they can't get their passport, or they need their veteran records. If I have to call, I will call. That is part of my job. That's the short-term solution. The long-term solution is to put into statute. And by the way, the entire delegation is working on this, not just me, because hurricanes and hurricane damage affects the whole state, to require FEMA to pay the money quicker, or this wouldn't be as big a problem if FEMA would reimburse the interest.
Right.
If you got to borrow the $5 million and you have to wait 5 years, okay. It's not a big deal if when it becomes $7 million, because you've had to wait for 5 years, they pay the interest. If the federal government has to pay the interest, that will create an incentive to get the claims resolved faster. And so those are the two solutions. Pay them quick, and whatever interest is accrued, the federal government should have to pay for. And so I'm working on all of that.
That level is so crucial. One of the past shows we did, Kurt, we had the Congressman Fine on, and a person reached out to us from our Orlando audience and said they couldn't get their representative to even call them back or get with them. And they said, what do I do? I suggested, hey, call this congressman and see.
Yeah.
They came back to us and said, I don't know what he did differently or what you did. And I said, I didn't do anything. I said, I never talked to him. He said, they got on top of it. FEMA's listening to us now. They're getting us money. That is the type leadership on the state level, the federal level, that we have to have. And we've got so many that sit in counties and go, and it's the same thing with some of the elected officials. We'll just have to process it through, and they send it to it and say, hey, it's government. I have no control over it.
Well, that's one of the benefits you get with me is I've only been your congressman for 15 months, but I have been an elected official for 10 years. And we had to do constituent service when I was in the state legislature. And that was something that I thought was important. Look, when you're in this job, you're basically an order taker, just like the servers here. You take orders from people and you try to serve their needs. And I tell people all the time, I'm good at taking orders. I'm married. You know, I know how to be told what to do. And so when people call and they say, I need help with X or Y or Z, if the request is legitimate, we go and get it done. Now, sometimes people call and it's not legitimate, but if people have a legitimate problem, I will fight just as hard for that problem as I will to deport every illegal immigrant. I mean, whatever it is.
Because here's my new order. Stop spending money overseas
Well,
to countries that hate us.
yeah, that's a
Because I
great
think you
point.
tweeted about that the other day.
There are a lot of countries that hate us, and we.
But they love our money.
Yes,
well,
yes.
I will point out we have
I've got
done.
ex-wives like that.
We have done it. We have taken a great first step on that. One of the things I was proud to be a part of is we ended USAID, and
Amen.
USAID was giving money for like transgender comic books in Colombia. I mean, just you would not believe
I read the report.
the ridiculous things that your federal government is spending money on. And by the way, it's a big deal because our country is going to collapse under our deficit debt if we don't get it under control. So as we made some great cuts, and I'm proud of it, but we have a long way to go. The federal government spends way too much money.
As Americans, would we have ever known about that if it wasn't for the Doge or Elon Musk team?
You would never have known about it actually because of the Doge team, but there's a second reason. You would never have known about it if Elon Musk hadn't bought X, which I think when we look in the history books, I mean, remember before Elon Musk bought X, if you said something that the people in power didn't like, they shut you down. You ask questions about COVID, they turned off your site. And I honestly believe I've often said that I believe Elon Musk is one of the people who will go down in history having saved the world, because there's a lot of garbage on X. Don't get me wrong. I have to read the comments.
I thought that was Fauci. I thought Fauci was going to go down as one that saved the world.
No, Fauci will go down as a historically evil figure, I believe.
Yeah.
But Elon Musk gave people the ability to communicate, and a lot of the stuff on X isn't true, but a lot of it is. Most of it is, and it gave us the ability to communicate things that we wouldn't otherwise know. So we wouldn't know about it because even if Doge had existed, if the media was controlled in the way that it is, no one would know. I actually think that's part of the reason why people hate Trump so much, is because Donald Trump was the first politician who figured out how to talk to the American people without going through the media. Now he has Truth Social, but it started with X. He came up with a way to get his message directly to people. He did not need it filtered through CBS or NBC or ABC. He could just say it. And it's Trump and Elon have saved the world.
So go ahead.
Well, that's why these shows like this show, Live, Work, Shop, Play, has taken off so well. You know, Senator Scott, Senator Moody was just on last week. So many people want to come on to shows to be able to say the truth and what their side is. Once media takes what they say, spins it all around and throws it out. Like Congressman Fine saying about the foreign money going to foreign countries. We got businesses, this local business, other local businesses that are paying a lot of taxes, that are seeing that money go overseas. We got FEMA damage or hurricane damage and all the way up through Asheville, Tennessee. And we saw money going to the Ukraine. I want to help people in the rest of the country and the rest of the world, but you got to take care of your own first. And this tax credit we're seeing locally to come with houses, Flagler County is going to feel it the worst because they are so big on homes, and we're building more homes, not bringing in more businesses. We've got more unemployment going on. The problem with that is on a local level, it's great. We're going to have people living here, but at the end of the day, they're going to be working and spending their money in other counties and spending their tax money in other counties, then coming back here and living for free.
Well, look, if it was up to me in an ideal world, and we have to be careful about how we do this, but in an ideal world, we would get rid of property taxes altogether.
Yeah.
And we would replace them with the sales tax. Now, what we have to be careful about is, we can't end up with very high both. But, look, there are solutions to this. The pier that's behind me, I got a bunch of money from FEMA to get that thing fixed. I mean, that's what your congressman does.
This has been part one of this two-part series here on the Joe Mullins Show. Please check dates and times for part two. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Recorded by the Flagler Voice Podcast Studio.